Before Barack Obama, the last Democrat to run for president was John Kerry. John Kerry, a Navy veteran. His rank was lieutenant when he was discharged. He earned a Silver Star, a Bronze Star, and 3 Purple Hearts for his service in Vietnam. The whole reason John Kerry became a public figure in the first place after he came home from war was because it was so striking to see somebody as highly decorated as he was speaking out against the war. But then, of course, in 2004, he had the temerity to run for president against a sitting president who had started 2 wars but never fought in one. And so part of the campaign against John Kerry was to try to erase his war hero status, to deny that he deserved the medals he had earned, to say that he was a coward, that he had lied to get those medals. When you research the swift boating of John Kerry, one of the most visually jarring things is when you get to the swift boating book. The book that attacked him for his service in Vietnam. When you look at that book cover, look at that little sash across the right corner there. Look at that little Miss America looking sash up there. New York Times #1 bestseller. Seriously, that thing. The same guy who did the debunked but politically lethal swift boating book has another potential #1 bestseller on the way. It's not even out yet, but it hit #1 on the Amazon bestseller list last week. It's called Where's the Birth Certificate? The Case That Barack Obama is Not Eligible to Be President. This new book from the Swift Boat guy is being published by WorldNet Daily, which has been the sort of hub for the people on the right who have attacked President Obama as secretly foreign. If you want to buy the new President Obama is Secretly Foreign book by the Swift Boating guy, you do not have to go to Amazon. You can get it straight from the WorldNet Daily online superstore. They're selling it at a discounted price of $8.70 more than the Amazon price. Yeah, you'll find it for sale in their special birther section. There's a whole section at the WorldNet Daily Superstore just for birth certificate specialty items. They also invite you to spend between $2,000 and $5,000 to underwrite ads for the book, going right over the heads of the hopelessly biased and politically correct press. You can actually pay for that. You can pay for it once, or you can have it deducted from your account on a monthly basis. The WorldNet Daily Superstore is also peddling Where's the Birth Certificate yard signs and rally signs for $19.95 each. Undocumented worker magnetic easy-off adhesive bumper stickers calling the president an undocumented worker. Get it? There are $4 White House eligibility postcards where they've planted the Where's the Birth Certificate sign on the White House lawn, thanks to the miracle of Photoshop. You can buy birther on board bumper stickers or magnets. There's a reason they call this thing the Superstore. This is not like the birther bodega. This is a whole lot of birther merchandising. And everything is frankly really expensive. What these folks have been demanding is that President Obama release his long-form birth certificate, right? President Obama astonishingly actually did that today. No, you were not high. It really happened. Even if you were high, seriously, it still happened. But if you had the kind of racket set up that WorldNet Daily does, if you had a money-making superstore racket set up like this all around this question, would you give up? Would you give up on this? Of course you wouldn't give this up. If you went to WorldNet Daily today to see their reaction to President Obama's birth certificate press conference, there are 2 things you would notice there. First, obviously, they still don't buy it. Under the headline, White House releases Obama, quote, birth certificate, end quote. The editor and executive officer of WorldNet Daily says, quote, it is important to remember there are still dozens of other questions concerning this question of eligibility that need to be resolved, concerning Barack Obama's parentage, his adoption, his citizenship status throughout his life. It would be a big mistake for everyone to jump to a conclusion now based on the release of this document, which raises as many questions as it answers. WorldNet Daily also floats the theory today that maybe the new birth certificate actually proves President Obama is ineligible to be president because of something inexplicable about his father. Yeah. Also, notice in terms of the graphic here, look at the graphic, the glossy photograph of the new dust jacket of the new birther book by the Swift Boating guy. WorldNet Daily assuring you today that book is still totally relevant. The Swift Boating author telling WorldNet Daily today, quote, when people read the book, they will see that Obama is not eligible to be president. Still. This new book they are trying to make all this money off of isn't even out yet. So, of course, they can't let this issue go. This is a money-making scam. This is a racket. And that is one reason that it exists, and it is continually promoted, and it will persist. But, you know, not everybody implicated in this is a grifter. Conspiracy theories are sort of their own reward. There is a reason that Glenn Beck is a popular television and radio host. Glenn Beck, yes, is personally making money off of peddling conspiracy theories, but his viewers aren't making money off it. People enjoy conspiracy theories. We are like that as a country. JFK assassination, or the moon landing, or aliens at Roswell, or 9/11 was an inside job. Americans like conspiracy theories. We just happen to be plumbed that way. 66% of Americans think the JFK assassination was part of a conspiracy as of 2006. 36% thought it was likely the U.S. government allowed or carried out 9/11. 33% of us think aliens have visited Earth. 6% still think the moon landing was faked still. It's not always a ton of people, but enough of us, a good amount of Americans, fall for stuff. We are plumbed to believe this kind of stuff. And that makes this country fertile territory for another group of people that is promoting this. Another group of people that has a material interest in holding on to the Barack Obama is secretly foreign birth certificate story. And that group is Republican politicians. Not all of them, of course, but those Republican politicians who want to push this issue for, frankly, racist political advantage. Politicians who don't want to be known as racists, necessarily, but who want to politically capitalize on resentment and unacceptance of Barack Obama as a real American president. You can't really be in mainstream National Party politics right now and be overtly white supremacist about it, but birtherism is a convenient proxy for that. The president is secretly foreign. He can't be American. He's not legitimate. He just doesn't seem right as a president, does he? Not from anything about his politics, but in his person. There's something about his body, his biography, that makes it seem like he shouldn't have been allowed to take a position like this. The birth certificate as an excuse to just question whether or not Barack Obama should have been allowed to run for president was really laid bare when the birther presidential candidate Donald Trump started expanding his questioning of the president's birth certificate to a bunch of other things he thinks ought to be questioned about the president now, too.
The word is, according to what I've read, that he was a terrible student when he went to Occidental. He then gets to Columbia. He then gets to Harvard. I heard at Columbia wasn't a very good student. He then gets to Harvard. How do you get into Harvard if you're not a good student? Now, maybe that's right or maybe it's wrong, but I don't know why he doesn't release his records. Why doesn't he release his Occidental records?
When the president released his long-form birth certificate today, this was the response on the front page of the right-wing website, The Drudge Report. Now let's see the college records. I don't usually quote people like Donald Trump in the Drudge Report, but if there was ever any doubt about whether this was substantively about the fact of the president's birth certificate, in case there was ever any remaining doubt about that, let this make it clear, okay? It is almost helpful to have the birth certificate thing substantively out of the way so we can all see that this has always just been a stand-in for raw racial questions about whether a man like President Obama should have even been allowed to run for this job. That's why Republican politicians have been pushing this. Despite all the ridicule, right? They've still been pushing it, and it has worked. It has resonated. Even Republican politicians who do not want to be known as birthers have been widely stoking this issue. There are bills demanding further documentation of the president's legitimacy in at least 13 states now. A New York Times CBS poll out last week showed 67% of Republican voters either believed President Obama was not born in the U.S. or they say they weren't sure. So Republican politicians wanting to capitalize on racial dissatisfaction, the whole idea that someone like Barack Obama was allowed to run for a job like this, they have found this to be a potent way to stir that up, to capitalize on that, to capture that. And they are not going to give that up. Congressman Louis Gohmert of Texas today announcing that this whole thing with the president in the briefing room and the birth certificate only proves that we need a federal birther bill, like the one he co-sponsored back in 2009. Newt Gingrich, potential presidential candidate, responding to this incident today by saying, of the president's decision to release his long-form birth certificate, Mr. Gingrich's response was, what took him so long? As if to say, the conspiracy continues. Why did it take so long? The Texas Republican who is behind that state's state-level birther bill announced already today that his bill is, quote, still on the table. We want to see a birth certificate, his legislative director explained. The one that we have that says birth certificate is from Mombasa, Kenya, with his footprint on it. He has still not produced an American birth certificate. What she's talking about with the Kenya thing is one of the many very badly forged fake foreign birth certificates that have circled on the internets. It has been and continues to be total bullpucky. But politicians do continue to push this stuff. That was not somebody like in the comment section of WorldNet Daily. That was the legislative director for a state legislator. And now that this issue is even more substantively confirmed to be bullpucky, why would we expect politicians who've been getting so much traction on this to stop pushing it? In the grifters, same deal. Now that this is even more substantively proved to be bullpucky, it was bullpucky before. Why would they stop now? All of the reasons they had to push this stuff before, they still have to keep pushing it. All of the incentives still line up. So the politicians, I can understand why they'd keep pushing it. The grifters, I got it. Here's the thing I don't understand. What is the reason for any journalist to have pushed this?
What do you think about this birth certificate issue? I mean, it has not been my main issue, but it kind of does get a little odd here after a while. Can't they just produce it?
Let's say that the people you have investigating, are they still investigating in Hawaii?
Well, I don't want to comment on that, but I can tell you there are a lot of problems with this. He has not given a birth certificate. And you know what? I wish he would. I'll give you an example.
We could end it simply. Just show it to us and it'd be over.
Show us the birth certificate. Thank you very much, Steve. I appreciate that. Just show us the birth certificate.
It's that simple.
It's that simple. Listen, reporting on spending press time covering birtherism itself, I think, is a defensible thing. Reporting on this as a phenomenon, reporting on the fact that this is a fundraising racket, and that it is money-making on the right, debunking this as a conspiracy theory, those are all respectable excuses for spending time talking about the birther phenomenon in a news context. But what is the excuse? What is even the motivation? What is the explanation for journalists even not on Fox News, taking up the birther cause, pushing the idea that there are real questions about the president's legitimacy, that it is a reasonable question to wonder if the president is secretly foreign, to wonder if he's holding something out on us, to wonder if maybe he shouldn't have been allowed to run for this job. I understand why Republican politicians would do that. I understand why grifters would do that. I can imagine myself into understanding why people who work at Fox News Channel would do that. Why would a non-Fox News journalist do that?
Last night, Trump was on CNN saying that he's been told the birth certificate is missing, that it's either not there or has been taken out somehow, and this is a problem for the president. When the White House hears this continued claim, what does it say? Trump and others keep saying that that's not the actual birth certificate, and as you know, Hawaii, the Department of Health says that you can request a birth certificate. You put in a Freedom of Information request, and within a few weeks, you'll get a copy out of the vault. Why doesn't the president do that?
Pressing the birther's cause in the White House briefing room. Legislation undermining the president's legitimacy as an American, questioning whether he should have even been allowed to run for the presidency in the first place. That legislation has been drafted by Republicans at the state level and at the federal level. Republicans pushed it at the federal level in 2009. They're now pushing it in more than a dozen state legislatures. Cashing in on a feeling that has to go unspoken, on a sentiment that rejects the idea that somebody who looks like President Obama can be an American president. That's why Republican politicians have been pushing this as an issue. Grifters have been pushing it because this turns out to be a particularly monetizable conspiracy theory for the right. So this conspiracy theory is pushed by Republican politicians because there's racist political gain to be had from it, and it's pushed by grifters because there's money to be had. Why is it being pushed by journalists?